The first Big Finish box set for 2024 opens up with quite the statement with Fugitive of the Daleks, written by one of my favourite writers from extended media of Doctor Who, Jonathan Morris. With box set 3, with these new First Doctor releases, we have the return of Stephen Noonan performing the First Doctor role, Maureen O'Brien, a more older depiction of the character post Mythmakers, and Lauren Cornelius playing the underrated companion Dodo, and I could say the same thing with Vicky too. Let's be honest, they didn't get the best writing or any type of character development in the classic series of the show, and departed quite abruptly. And that is what not just the First Doctor box sets alone have done, but Big Finish just have a tremendous portfolio and track record of just giving the characters the development that they deserved. That goes all the way back to the beginning of when the company was founded, with like Colin Baker, for example. His TV run, yeah, it's not the best, and his writing for the Doctor himself, he deserved a lot better. And yet, Big Finish, they've done some of the best Sixth Doctor stories of all time. Listeners who experienced the previous First Doctor release, the Demon Song, yeah, I can't believe it's already been a year. That's scary that time's going that fast. That release ended on a cliffhanger with the Doctor appearing invisible and disappearing from the TARDIS, which leads into this release of the Doctor meeting an older Vicky with the return of the Daleks. How do the Daleks work in this, considering Dodo from the War Machines has no understanding or has ever encountered the Daleks? So how is Dodo utilised in this audio? And the resolution to that, I do find quite funny, how they played that whole thing. It's just a little plot point. I would say that was nicely done. I've gone more into detail about Stephen Noonan's performing in the previous First Doctor release, so I'm not going to dwell too much on like the performances and that. You already know what it is from me. It's great, and it's improved from each box set. It gets a thumbs up with me in that department. Anyway, let's review Fugitive of the Daleks by Jonathan Morris. The story opens up with Vicky, years after the events of the Mythmakers, who is now a grandmother settling in, who told stories about a flying temple, the Daleks, and the companions she travelled with, but they were regarded as nothing but fairy stories. Vicky is surprised but warmed by the feeling of the TARDIS coming back, and the distant humming of the TARDIS console is heard. When Vicky enters the TARDIS, she gets the feeling of warmth, living back to her days of travelling with the Doctor. The Doctor sees Vicky. The Doctor feels almost lost. The Doctor is apparently not well and needs medical treatment, and keeps calling Vicky Susan. There seems to be something wrong with the Doctor's persona. No Dodo. That must mean something. With the Doctor ill, we see Vicky as more the primary character to assist the Doctor getting the treatment he needs, and they're on a space station, which is great to see such an underwritten character in the classic era have development that she deserved, rather a very abrupt written ending in the Mythmakers. So it's nice to see Maureen O'Brien shine just by herself. And yeah, she is, I would say, the primary performing character for me in this box set. And doing stuff like that is great because of the point I have made of just not having that type of screen time and development with classic Who. Episode 1 leaves a lot of questions, as I said, with Dodo. The Doctor hasn't even mentioned her by name. We're led to believe from the events of the previous box set the Doctor disappeared, so how does Dodo actually play a role? And it's building up to something rather unconventional. The space crew are a little strange too. They use manipulation tactics to get what they want, and apparently they're immortal and have lived for over 500 years and want to escape the prison they are in, so you're distrusting of their motives. Despite giving the Doctor aid, there is an apparent plague spreading throughout the station, and them being immortal is what prevented them from dying from the plague. So they're going to be using the Doctor and Vicky, and are in a state of desperation to leave, and they were even to making Vicky a hostage to force the Doctor to take them into the TARDIS. How Jonathan Morris written the space crew, in the beginning phase to it all, you're completely distrusting of them because they use manipulation tactics, but they're not necessarily evil. They're just in a complete desperate act because you're led to believe that they are immortal and they're 500 years old, and this apparent black hole which is going to consume the space station, and that is going to happen in 20 years time. So they're just on this station until they're just going to die from a black hole. So they go from being very distrusting to actually showing a lot of courage. That is when the Daleks come into the picture. The Doctor seems to have memories of the chase, the mechanoid city burning, and that is it. Has no memories of leaving his past companion, faded from his memory. Being Ian, Barbara, Susan, and even Vicky herself. So the Doctor has temporal amnesia, eh? Something that the Doctor has suffered with for so long, and even the 8th Doctor alone, I feel so sorry for his brain. Just leave the Doctor's brain alone, guys. Though when the Doctor senses something, he insists to leave immediately. These characters, the space crew, as stated, aren't particularly evil, but desperate. Episode 1 is a pretty good opening episode, and left with a bunch of questions, as I just stated. And what the crew have been through and their predicament, you do feel sorry for them, regardless of their position. Now, I don't think mentioning this is in fact a spoiler, but there is something in the later stages of this story that connects way at the beginning. I think Jonathan Morris dealt that so flipping well. The space crew, I don't believe it's a spoiler, it will not ruin your experience when I mention this. They are not immortal. They were led to believe that they were. They are in fact androids, but they never knew that. And the Doctor's speech, especially Stephen Noonan's performance about morality and living life, really, really good. And that somehow, which I will not spoil, has a connection, something related to the later episodes of the story. Bloody good writing from Jonathan Morris there. Love that. That was super good, but I ain't spoiling it. You listen to it, you know what I'm talking about. And throughout the story as well, they use all the classic sound effects, like the time capsule door opening when it's materializing and landed, even flashbacks to the time destructor bomb, the Dalek time capsule door opening, just all the classic sound effects from the William Hartnell era. Oh, I was just being a complete fanboy, I loved it. The space crew used deception tactics to attempt to trick the Daleks, but the Daleks are stubborn with their bloodlust. The Doctor complimented the space crew on their humility and courage. It's a nice switch considering their predicament in the previous episode and them being quite forceful. The space crew were written very well, even though they were only in episode 1 and episode 2. But there seems to be something quite odd with the Daleks in Fugitive of the Daleks. Their actions seem to be strange and not very Dalek-like, almost anti-Dalek. They didn't kill the space crew. They just fled. Bit odd. Daleks don't do that, don't they? So when that happened, I was like, why? But maybe I was kind of like overanalyzing this part a bit. Maybe the Daleks were being more devilish because there was an apparent black hole coming to consume the entire space station anyway. So I was saying they were going to die anyway, because these space crew can't leave because they're androids who are dependent on the machinery over there. If they were to leave the space station, they would just, shut down because they would have no power source. So they were doomed to begin with, which is, pretty dark to come to think of it. Considering they're just androids, and it plays on this whole plot point that they're not living and they're just pieces of code, but then the Doctor kind of boosts them that they do deserve life despite them being just androids, and a lot more than just programming, but deserve free will from that said programming. So this story is basically The Chase, and you could kind of call it as a sequel to both The Chase and the Daleks' Master Plan. The story structure It's very similar to The Keys of Marinus and The Chase, where every episode takes the story into different locations. More so The Chase, and the Daleks are following them to hunt them down and capture the fugitives, the Doctor and Vicky. So it is pretty much like The Chase. It's silly in some places, I do agree, but not as silly as The Chase TV story, because that could be flipping bonkers. But yeah, if you like The Chase and its formula and its format, this will definitely be your cup of tea. But I would say the writing in Fugitive compared to The Chase, there's a lot more of a story here, a lot more twists than just The Chase being kind of like a runaround. What I love is the Doctor is still doing the loving grandfather role, even though Vicky is older and won't be too vocal about reacting to a bunch of skeletal remains. Vicky has less trouble about that and more about the primitives on a planet surrounding them. Even though I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but episode 2, when they leave the space station, feels like it's paying a lot of homage to either An Unearthly Child or Death to the Daleks, because the predicament they are in by Vicky desecrating the primitive remains of their ancestors, it feels almost like how Sarah did the same thing in the Exelon City, and they're now to be sacrificed. So either Jonathan Morris is trying to do a play to An Unearthly Child, like the primitives, or Death to the Daleks. That's how I see it personally, so maybe that was a little bit of a nod to Death to the Daleks. I don't recall him mentioning that in the behind the scenes, but I might have missed it. But yeah, it felt like a Death to the Daleks reference. All the little nods and just references to the William Hartnell era just fills me with joy. Absolutely loved it. And if you're just a William Hartnell era fan, then I would say this is just a must of how it was just done and delivered. Everything in the department of sound effects, the writing and the structure of the story, it would just be your cup of tea. 100% if you're a William Hartnell fan, that is just guaranteed. It's also a good thing that there's no supporting characters tagging along with like the Doctor and Vicky, because I think that would just detract of Vicky's shining in the box set. It wouldn't be needed. Vicky and Doctor, Stephen Noonan and Maureen O'Brien just shine together, and that is just done to a T. And episode 2's cliffhanger makes you go, oh shit. Things are really going up now. The stakes are increasing, and to be fair, episode 3 does the exact same thing too. Love the cliffhangers, and I especially love one of them, which I'll get to. The story goes from like danger to like flipping red alert mode. More like dangerous for the Doctor and Vicky, with the Daleks pursuing them. God, it's a really well paced story for a 6-parter, and that's not easy to achieve, because you can criticise a lot of 6-part stories in the classic era and they can be kind of tedious and slogs. But here, nope, it's written really well by Jonathan Morris. Just the whole thing from start to finish. No drag, no pacing, no padding problems. It flows perfectly. By not having supporting characters, Vicky and the Doctor can have the much needed development and character interactions that they deserve. Vicky puts the Doctor in the crossfire through about meddling in history, and despite the Doctor's warning about changing history, Vicky brings up the point, who decides about controlling history and fate, because the Doctor himself has done so in the Romans of Nero and the Mythmakers with the wooden horse. Just those little moments alone within the story just works so well for me, because it just so needed to be in the classic series, but it never really happened. But what about Dodo? No sign of her. Now, how they did the twist with Dodo, personally, well, to be honest, it works anyway. It's a really good twist, but to make it even better for me, I just wanted to put her on the cover. That would have been like a big surprise, and I think that twist had a little bit more impact, but it doesn't really matter because it's just good anyway. And I find it quite funny as well, because of it connects to the episode 2's cliffhanger. So yeah, really good. I found that quite funny and amusing, but I ain't gonna spoil that part. It's quite an easy 6-part to spoil, and I really don't want to ruin it for anyone, so basically just buy the thing. Just buy it. It's really worth it. But yeah, episode 5 reveals the whole connection to the previous box set, why the Doctor disappeared. And you don't even need to listen to the Demon Song, the previous release, to appreciate the story. This release provides plenty of context within that. Also reveals why the Daleks' orders are so strange. Not changing the course of history, avoiding battlefields. That just doesn't sound very Dalek, doesn't it? Yep, that it's not just strange writing from Jonathan Morris, it means something. Because Daleks changing history, they're doing that all the time with Big Finish. Honestly, I'm just going to leave it there. If I discuss any more, I think it's just going to go into spoiler territory. And I don't really want to ruin this audio for anybody, so I'm just going to cut it there and say this is a damn good box set. And what I will mention is this. Props to Jonathan Morris, the writer again. He's my favourite writer with Big Finish, if I'm honest. So this box set gives the proper departure and ending and goodbye for Vicky and the Doctor. That scene at the end was just stupendous. It was beautiful, it was amazing, and it was the much needed departure from what we got in just the Mythmakers, which was abrupt and just, well, there was never any goodbye. And that this release enforces that there was never any goodbye to begin with, and it gives us that goodbye. Well done, Jonathan Morris. Well done to Big Finish to giving respect to Maureen O'Brien. And I would say Maureen O'Brien, for me, was the star and the lead for this Big Finish release. For me, 100% shines, and it's lovely to have a 6-part adventure, 6 parts, to give her brilliant material. And Big Finish have done this for me with like the 5th Doctor, many of the companions, made me appreciate these characters a lot more than what the classic series ever did. I know I love the classic series, but gotta hand it to Big Finish. They know how to give these characters the proper respect and the proper writing. Thumbs up from me. I will gladly give this release, Fugitive of the Daleks, a 9 out of 10. It could be my favourite First Doctor release of all time by Big Finish. I don't really know. And there's so many companion chronicles and early adventures. It's difficult to say really, but it's definitely up there, 100%. I enjoyed this from start to finish. There's nothing really wrong with it. No. But why won't give you a 10 out of 10 then? If there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, I'm just one of those people who hardly rates anything 10 out of 10. So I do treat 10 out of 10 like a jewel, a diamond. But hey, 9 out of 10 is still a very strong rating, and this is a very strong box set. To me, I think these box sets have just improved from like, each one just gets better and better and better, and well, box set 4's got a lot to do if it wants to beat this one, because wow, it's got a lot to do, yeah, as I mentioned. Though, I will say this part, because this isn't a spoiler, because it's not resolved in this box set. It looks like it's hinting at a future release. But how the Doctor is taken out of time has nothing to do with the Daleks or Fugitive of the Daleks as a release. That is still up in the air, and the Doctor insinuates that someone or something has taken them out of time. I mean, I have my theories. Come on, it's got to be the Madeleine Monk, surely. First Doctor villain, yeah, it has to be. It's the Madeleine Monk. Yeah, I believe box set 4 has to be the Madeleine Monk. I think that is just mandatory to have in the First Doctor of these new era First Doctor box sets. I think Big Finish should do that. I think that's a no-brainer. So thank you for watching my review of Fugitive of the Daleks. Recommend it. Yeah, just buy it. No questions. Nothing more to be said. Just buy it. Just buy it. Thank you for watching. You better buy it on the website, or you probably already got it. Good for you. Thanks for watching, everyone.